Imagine a world where politics meets late-night infomercials, where a former president is pitched like a questionable product, complete with a catchy jingle and a too-good-to-be-true sales pitch. Well, that's exactly what the Lincoln Project just pulled off. Their latest ad takes a jab at Donald Trump in a way that's both hilarious and a little unsettling. It's got that vintage, cheesy commercial vibe, the kind that makes you stop and wonder, asterisk, is this real? Asterisk, but instead of selling you a miracle weight loss pill or a revolutionary kitchen gadget, this fake ad is pushing Trump's pandemic-era COVID treatment like it's the next big thing. If you remember the early days of the pandemic, you probably recall the chaos, the uncertainty, and of course, the infamous moment when Trump floated the idea of certain treatments, some of which had experts shaking their heads. Now, years later, the Lincoln Project is taking that moment and turning it into a retro-style mock commercial, complete with all the over-the-top, late-night TV tropes. Think bold fonts, dramatic voiceovers, and a narrator who sounds like they could sell you anything from a hair growth formula to a magical cleaning spray. But here's the kicker, this isn't just a parody. It's a direct shot at Trump's handling of the COVID crisis, wrapped up in satire. The Lincoln Project has never shied away from trolling the former president, and this time, they've outdone themselves. The ad doesn't just poke fun at Trump. It reminds people of the bizarre and reckless moments that defined his response to the pandemic. And as funny as it is, it also brings back real questions about leadership, responsibility, and trust. The timing of this couldn't be more interesting. With Trump back in the spotlight, ramping up his campaign efforts, the Lincoln Project is making sure voters don't forget the past. They know how to hit where it hurts, and this ad isn't just about laughs. It's about reminding people why his presidency was so chaotic. So, what exactly does this fake ad say? What's the reaction been like? And more importantly, how is Trump responding to yet another sharp attack from one of his most relentless critics? Stick around, because we're about to break it all down. The Lincoln Project has built a reputation for using humor, irony, and brutal honesty to go after Donald Trump and his allies. They don't hold back, and this latest ad is no exception. It's the kind of political satire that makes you laugh at first, but then, as it sinks in, you realize how much truth is packed into the joke. The retro-style production is almost too spot-on, grainy footage, over-the-top sales pitches, and that exaggerated enthusiasm that makes you question if you're watching a comedy sketch or an actual advertisement from the past. But here's the thing, this isn't just a random attack. The Lincoln Project knows exactly what they're doing. By using nostalgia, they tap into something familiar and disarming, making it easier for their message to spread. People love sharing things that make them laugh, and this ad is designed to go viral. It's a strategic move, meant to get under Trump's skin while keeping his past mistakes fresh in voters' minds. And speaking of Trump, his relationship with the truth, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, has been complicated, to say the least. From press conferences where he contradicted medical experts to the promotion of unproven treatments, his handling of the crisis was anything but steady. The Lincoln Project is using this ad to remind people of those chaotic moments, bringing them back into focus just as Trump attempts to rebrand himself for another presidential run. The ad itself doesn't need to do much heavy lifting. The absurdity of the past speaks for itself. Watching it, you can almost hear echoes of those infamous briefings where Trump made headlines for all the wrong reasons. The Lincoln Project knows that humor can be one of the most powerful political weapons. It sticks with people in ways that traditional messaging doesn't. This isn't just about pointing out flaws. It's about making sure those flaws aren't forgotten. Of course, the reactions have been mixed. Trump's critics find it brilliant, another example of the Lincoln Project's sharp-edged commentary. But his supporters, not so much. Some have called the ad disrespectful, arguing that it twists the narrative and takes things out of context. Others see it as just another hit piece from an organization that's made its mission to take down Trump at all costs. And then there's Trump himself. While he hasn't directly responded to this particular ad yet, history tells us that when something gets under his skin, he doesn't stay quiet for long. That's part of what makes this ad so interesting. The Lincoln Project isn't just reminding people of the past, they're baiting Trump, daring him to react. And if he does, it only amplifies their message, drawing more attention to the very thing he'd probably rather people forget. It's a political chess game, and right now, the Lincoln Project is making its move. But what happens next? Will Trump fire back? Will this ad actually change minds, or is it just another viral moment that fades with the next news cycle? There's a lot to unpack, and the fallout from this could be just as entertaining as the ad itself. The Lincoln Project's ad is more than just a viral stunt, it's part of a larger battle playing out in real time. Trump is no stranger to political attacks, but what makes this one different is how it blends humor with a sharp critique of his leadership. Satire has a way of cutting through the noise, and this ad forces people to remember moments that might have otherwise faded into the background. The pandemic was a time of confusion, fear, and loss, and for many, Trump's handling of it still feels personal. That's what makes this ad hit harder. It's not just about politics, it's about trust, consequences, and the choices that shaped history. While some dismiss the Lincoln Project as just another anti-Trump group, their influence can't be ignored. They know how to get attention, and they know how to make Trump react. If he responds to the ad, it will only give it more visibility, and that's exactly what they want. The Lincoln Project thrives on drawing Trump into a back and forth, using his own reactions to keep the story alive. In the past, their ads have triggered angry social media posts from Trump, turning what might have been a short-lived attack into a multi-day news cycle. That's the gamble they're making here. Will he take the bait? But beyond Trump's potential reaction, the ad also raises bigger questions about how history remembers leadership in times of crisis. The pandemic was a defining moment, and as Trump eyes another run for the White House, the debate over his past decisions is far from over. His supporters argue that he did the best he could with the information available at the time, while his critics point to the misinformation, the contradictions, and the moments that left experts stunned. This ad doesn't just remind people of what happened, it forces them to re-examine it with fresh eyes. At the same time, this is about more than just one man. The Lincoln Project's message goes beyond Trump to the larger political forces that enabled his leadership, his allies, his advisors, the media voices that defended his choices. All of them played a role in shaping how the pandemic unfolded. The ad may be a parody, but it taps into a deeper frustration about accountability. In a time when political narratives shift so quickly, the Lincoln Project is making sure this particular chapter isn't rewritten or forgotten. Meanwhile, within Trump's own political circle, there's likely concern about how attacks like this could impact his campaign. While his core base remains loyal, swing voters and moderates are still up for grabs. If reminders of past controversies start gaining traction, it could make things harder for him as he tries to move forward. That's where the real conflict lies, not just in the battle between Trump and the Lincoln Project, but in the larger question of whether voters will see his presidency as a success story or a cautionary tale. The stakes are high, and the next moves could change everything. If Trump responds, it could breathe even more life into the story. If he stays silent, it raises questions about whether his team sees this as a real threat. Either way, this isn't just about one ad. It's about the fight to control the narrative. And as we've seen before, in a media landscape that thrives on controversy, this is far from over. As the ad continues to spread across social media, it's clear that the Lincoln Project has struck a nerve. News outlets are picking it up, late-night hosts are joking about it, and political commentators are weighing in on whether this kind of attack actually moves the needle or if it's just another viral moment that will fade. But one thing is certain, Trump doesn't like being the butt of the joke. In the past, he's fired back at critics with insults, legal threats, or lengthy rants on social media. The question now is, how will he respond this time? Behind the scenes, his team is likely scrambling. damage control is a crucial part of any campaign, and they know that letting this ad dominate the conversation for too long is a problem. The longer people are reminded of his pandemic-era leadership, the harder it becomes for him to shift the focus to his future plans. His advisors might be urging him to ignore it, to move on, but that's not exactly his style. Trump built his brand on fighting back, on never letting an attack go unanswered. If he lashes out, though, he risks amplifying the ad even further, ensuring that even more people see it. Meanwhile, his supporters are reacting in full force, calling the ad an unfair smear campaign. They argue that the Lincoln Project is twisting events, making a joke out of a serious time in history. Some are even suggesting that this is part of a larger effort to weaken Trump, just as he's gaining momentum in the race. But while they work to dismiss it, the ad keeps racking up views, gaining traction in ways that can't be easily controlled. This isn't just about Trump's base. It's about the voters who are still undecided, the ones who are being reminded of the chaos that defined his time in office. As tensions build, political strategists on both sides are watching closely. Will this ad become the kind of moment that lingers, shaping public perception in a meaningful way? Or will it be just another flash of controversy in an election cycle that's already overflowing with drama? The Lincoln Project has been playing this game for years, and they know how to keep the pressure on. If Trump responds, they'll have another ad ready. If he stays quiet, they'll find another way to push the narrative forward. Either way, they're not letting this go. At the same time, Trump has his own playbook. He knows how to turn attacks into rallying cries, using them to fire up his base and claim he's being unfairly targeted. If he does respond, it could take the conversation in an entirely new direction, making the ad just one piece of a much bigger battle. The tension is at its highest now. Everyone is waiting, watching, anticipating the next move. Because whatever happens next could change the course of this fight entirely. Just as everyone is waiting to see how Trump will react, something unexpected happens. Instead of Trump himself firing back first, one of his close allies steps in. A well-known conservative commentator, someone with direct ties to Trump's inner circle, goes on air and completely dismisses the Lincoln Project ad, not with anger, but with mockery of their own. They call the group desperate, washed up, and irrelevant. Instead of defending Trump's pandemic-era decisions, they shift the conversation, painting the Lincoln Project as nothing more than a group of bitter former Republicans who have lost their influence. It's a strategic move, one that tries to flip the narrative and put the focus back on the messengers rather than the message. But this only adds fuel to the fire. The Lincoln Project isn't about to back down, and instead of retreating, they double down. Within hours, they release another ad, not just another satirical take, but a direct response to the counterattack. This time, they don't just target Trump's handling of the pandemic. They call out the media voices who defended him, the ones who tried to downplay the crisis while Americans struggled. It's a reminder that the chaos wasn't just about Trump alone. It was about an entire ecosystem that allowed misinformation and confusion to thrive. This is where things take another turn. The fight is no longer just between Trump and the Lincoln Project. Now, it's spreading across conservative media, with some Trump loyalists demanding that their side stop engaging and others pushing back even harder. Some argue that drawing attention to the ad only helps it reach more people, while others insist that letting it go unanswered makes Trump look weak. The divide is subtle but noticeable, and it raises a bigger question. How much control does Trump still have over his own narrative? Behind the scenes, his campaign is in a tough spot. If they ignore the ad entirely, they risk looking like they have no defense. If Trump jumps into the fight himself, it gives the Lincoln Project exactly what they want: more attention, more headlines, and a bigger platform to keep hammering away at his past mistakes. The longer they hesitate, the more the story spirals out of their hands. And then, just when it seems like Trump might actually let this one slide, he makes his move. Late at night, a social media post appears. It's classic Trump, bold, dismissive, laced with personal attacks and claims of fake news. But buried in the rant is something new, something different. He doesn't just attack the Lincoln Project. He also takes aim at certain figures in conservative media, calling out weak Republicans and phony conservatives who, in his words, aren't doing enough to defend him. The post isn't just about the ad anymore. It's about loyalty, about drawing lines between who's truly on his side and who isn't. And just like that, the conflict takes on a life of its own. What started as a satirical ad has now sparked a much bigger fight, one that isn't just about Trump versus his critics, but about the fractures within his own movement. With the stakes rising and tensions hitting a boiling point, the question now isn't just how Trump will respond, it's how his own allies will react to being pulled into the fight, and that could change everything. Trump's late-night post sets off a chain reaction, and suddenly, the fight is no longer just about a single ad. It's about loyalty, division, and power. His most dedicated supporters rally behind him, attacking the Lincoln Project even harder, but others in his own party hesitate. Some conservative commentators who have always defended him now find themselves in an uncomfortable position. Do they echo his attack on their own colleagues, deepening the rift, or do they stay quiet and risk being labeled as traitors? What started as a satirical ad has turned into something much bigger, a test of Trump's influence within his own ranks. The Lincoln Project anticipated that he would lash out, but they might not have expected the cracks that would start forming within his own camp. Behind closed doors, campaign strategists scrambled to control the damage. This wasn't the fight they wanted. They needed to keep Trump focused on his path forward, not rehashing past controversies, and certainly not picking fights with allies. Yet, here he is, doing exactly that, pulling more people into a battle that should have been a passing headline. As tensions reach their peak, something even more unexpected happens. A former Trump insider, someone who once stood by his side during the pandemic briefings, breaks their silence. In a rare interview, they acknowledge that mistakes were made, that there were moments where things could have been handled differently. They don't outright betray Trump, but they don't fully defend him either. It's a carefully calculated statement, but it lands like a bombshell. For the first time, someone from Trump's inner circle is opening the door to a conversation that his team has been trying to shut down. The reaction is immediate. Trump's supporters call it a betrayal. His critics call it vindication. The Lincoln Project wastes no time, using the moment to amplify their message even further. And Trump, he does what he does best. He fights back. Another post, another fiery speech, another attempt to control the narrative. But this time, something feels different. This isn't just about a political ad anymore. It's about the growing realization that even within his own movement, not everyone is willing to blindly follow his lead. The dust settles, but the impact lingers. The Lincoln Project got what they wanted: attention, conversation, and a reminder to voters of Trump's past. Trump, on the other hand, walks away with something unexpected: questions about whether his grit on the party is as strong as it once was. And in the end, that might be the real twist. The ad was never just about mocking him. It was about planting a seed of doubt, a reminder that even the loudest voices can't erase history. And as the headlines shift and new battles take center stage, one thing is clear: this fight isn't over. It's only just beginning. As the dust begins to settle, the political world takes a step back to assess the fallout. The Lincoln Project got exactly what they wanted. Their ad wasn't just a viral moment. It became a catalyst for a much larger conversation. What started as a satirical jab at Trump's handling of the pandemic turned into something bigger, something more revealing. It exposed lingering tensions within his own party, created ripples across conservative media, and forced even his staunchest allies to navigate a controversy they hadn't planned for. For Trump, the battle didn't end with a single post. He continued to hit back, throwing accusations at the Lincoln Project, at the media, even at some of his own former allies. His strategy has always been to fight harder, to never back down, but this time, the fight wasn't just against his usual opponents. The real challenge came from the people who once stood by him, the ones who were now carefully choosing their words, hesitating in ways they hadn't before. That hesitation, that slight uncertainty from within his own camp, was something new. At the same time, the Lincoln Project wasted no time capitalizing on the moment. Their ad was already successful, but now, with Trump personally responding, it had even more traction. They pushed out follow-ups, dug into more footage from the pandemic era, and kept the conversation alive as long as possible. Their goal was never just to get under Trump's skin. It was to remind voters of the past, to keep those chaotic moments from fading away as he tried to shape his next campaign. But as the news cycle moved forward, a bigger question emerged. Did this ad actually change anything? Did it sway voters? Did it shift public opinion? That's always the hardest part to measure. For Trump's loyal supporters, nothing was going to change their minds. They saw the ad as just another attack, another example of the media and political elites trying to bring him down. But for the voters who weren't as committed, the ones still weighing their options, it served as a reminder. The reaction is immediate. Trump's supporters call it a betrayal. His critics call it vindication. The Lincoln Project wastes no time, using the moment to amplify their message even further. And Trump, he does what he does best, he fights back. Another post, another fiery speech, another attempt to control the narrative. But this time, something feels different. This isn't just about a political ad anymore. It's about the growing realization that even within his own movement, not everyone is willing to blindly follow his lead. The dust settles, but the impact lingers. The Lincoln Project got what they wanted: attention, conversation, and a reminder to voters of Trump's past. Trump, on the other hand, walks away with something unexpected: questions about whether his grit on the party is as strong as it once was. And in the end, that might be the real twist. The ad was never just about mocking him. It was about planting a seed of doubt, a reminder that even the loudest voices can't erase history. And as the headlines shift and new battles take center stage, one thing is clear: this fight isn't over. It's only just beginning. As the dust begins to settle, the political world takes a step back to assess the fallout. The Lincoln Project got exactly what they wanted. Their ad wasn't just a viral moment. It became a catalyst for a much larger conversation. What started as a satirical jab at Trump's handling of the pandemic turned into something bigger, something more revealing. It exposed lingering tensions within his own party, created ripples across conservative media, and forced even his staunchest allies to navigate a controversy they hadn't planned for. For Trump, the battle didn't end with a single post. He continued to hit back, throwing accusations at the Lincoln Project, at the media, even at some of his own former allies. His strategy has always been to fight harder, to never back down, but this time, the fight wasn't just against his usual opponents. The real challenge came from the people who once stood by him, the ones who were now carefully choosing their words, hesitating in ways they hadn't before. That hesitation, that slight uncertainty from within his own camp, was something new. At the same time, the Lincoln Project wasted no time capitalizing on the moment. Their ad was already successful, but now, with Trump personally responding, it had even more traction. They pushed out follow-ups, dug into more footage from the pandemic era, and kept the conversation alive as long as possible. Their goal was never just to get under Trump's skin. It was to remind voters of the past, to keep those chaotic moments from fading away as he tried to shape his next campaign. But as the news cycle moved forward, a bigger question emerged. Did this ad actually change anything? Did it sway voters? Did it shift public opinion? That's always the hardest part to measure. For Trump's loyal supporters, nothing was going to change their minds. They saw the ad as just another attack, another example of the media and political elites trying to bring him down. But for the voters who weren't as committed, the ones still weighing their options, it served as a reminder. Not necessarily a definitive turning point, but a piece of the puzzle, another layer in the larger conversation about Trump's leadership and whether or not the country was ready to go back down that road. Trump's campaign, meanwhile, took steps to move on. They shifted the narrative, refocused on new talking points, and worked to drown out the noise. His rallies, his speeches, his social media presence, everything was about looking ahead, about convincing voters that the past didn't matter as much as the future. But no matter how much they tried to push forward, the moments from the past had a way of creeping back in. For the Lincoln Project, this wasn't the end. They had made their mark, but they knew the election was still a long way off, and they had more to say. More ads, more attacks, more ways to keep Trump on the defensive. They weren't just an anti-Trump group. They had positioned themselves as one of his biggest, loudest, and most persistent critics. And if this ad was any indication, they weren't going anywhere. As for Trump, the fight continued, just as it always had. Every attack, every controversy, every moment of backlash was something he turned into fuel for his movement. He had weathered worse, and he knew that his base thrived on the idea that he was always under attack. But even as he charged forward, something lingered beneath the surface. The cracks, the moments of hesitation, the people who were once fiercely loyal now treading carefully. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it was enough to make some wonder if, just maybe, his grit on the party wasn't as unshakable as it once was. As for Trump, the fight continued, just as it always had. Every attack, every controversy, every moment of backlash was something he turned into fuel for his movement. He had weathered worse, and he knew that his base thrived on the idea that he was always under attack. But even as he charged forward, something lingered beneath the surface. The cracks, the moments of hesitation, the people who were once fiercely loyal now treading carefully. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it was enough to make some wonder if, just maybe, his grit on the party wasn't as unshakable as it once was. In the end, the ad was just a small part of a much bigger battle. The election was still ahead, the political landscape still shifting, and the question of Trump's influence still unfolding. For now, both sides had made their moves, both had scored their points, but the real fight, the one that would determine what came next, was still waiting just around the corner.